So let's go ahead and talk about the HK45. I will first concede that this is currently my kind of go-to firearm for suppressing 45. I'll talk about why that is. Some pros, some cons. It's not perfect. Some things you may want to know about if you're considering purchasing it. So first and foremost, what caught me off guard is these are now made in the US. For some reason I didn't think that was the case. I thought HK was a big kind of a German manufacturing company, but a couple of reasons why that may be the case. One, they wanted to play in that modular handgun system program. Another reason was apparently manufacturing or labor in the US is cheaper than that in Germany. And perhaps, and a third reason is they had to get out of northern Germany because I believe HK sold some parts or sold some pistols to foreign governments without notifying the German government. Then those ended up with a third-party transfer. Folks weren't happy, and this was kind of a compromise. So, like I said, good or bad, it's certainly different. So the pistols are made in the US. Magazines are still made in Germany, and the aftermarket, or the HK aftermarket threaded barrel is still made in Germany. We'll see if that'll change. So starting with the barrel, this is, at least for now, a German manufactured 45 ACP barrel, 16x1 left hand metric threads. That is a common offering for most HK pistols with the exception of the Mark 23, which is 16x1 right hand. For whatever reason they want to be a little different. You will notice a silicone kind of a O-ring here that is intended to seal up a little bit better with the slide and also minimize blowback. Beefy chamber here, as always, orthogonal rifling and a standard kind of HK lockup there. In the slide, you will notice serrations in the rear, and full serrations in the rear, half serrations in the front. Very large external extractor with sort of a loaded chamber indicator. I suppose if you push that out, you could see a little bit of red. Probably wouldn't trust my life to it. Very generous slide. Lots of kind of area for debris, a little bit higher sitting than perhaps some previous handguns, which gives you a higher bore axis. Generally not something you want to increase, but in this firearm I think it works fine. Firing pin block further away from the breech, which is a good thing. As I mentioned, when you shoot suppressed, or in general, the dirt tends to go from here on back. So you kind of want to avoid having any moving parts close to your dirtiest part of the pistol, which kind of makes sense. Very clean, very nice machining. A little bit of tooling marks, but nothing too severe. The recoil guide rod is captive. It is steel, and it does have this buffer on here. Very nice, actually. I don't know of any other companies that do it. There's some other HK pistols that do it, but it does kind of minimize the impact that you have on the slide stop, which should last a little bit longer. I think it preserves your firearm a little bit and tends to kind of offer a more smoother shooting pistol. The frame itself is kind of a standard, the new monolithic frame. This one only has interchangeable back straps, so if you want to fill in this part in your hand, you can go ahead and switch those out. Otherwise, everything tends to be ambidextrous. The magazine release is right here at the bottom, so it's not a push button. It's more of a, I don't know, just a drop lever, but certainly better than the European heel release. They went away from a proprietary rail. This has a standard M1913 rail on it. This particular one has been outfitted with the LEM law enforcement modification trigger, the factory version. There's two versions, and essentially the difference is the springs, and you have a trade-off. You can either have a lighter trigger but a mushier reset, or a slightly heavier trigger but a more positive reset. So this one's the latter, has a slightly heavier trigger pull compared to the other LEM version, but a sharper reset. So that's just the way it is. Came in, I see no reason to change it. I'll explain how that works after I put the slide on. The slide release controls are ambidextrous as well. This is just a captive lever that attaches to this one and mimics the controls. Other than that, kind of standard fare. Fairly small slide rails on the frame, but they tend to do the job, and there's not a lot of wear points, and these have lasted upwards to 100,000 rounds. So although it may kind of mentally make you question why they're so thin, they're thicker than a Glock's, and Glocks are known to run forever. So to reassemble it, you just slide the slide over the frame. You line up these notches here, and then you go ahead and drop the slide stop. So the way that the LEM trigger works is you would chamber your first round. You have kind of a two-stage trigger, fairly light pull until you feel stage 2 where it breaks. Go ahead, break that. Relatively short reset, and you can go ahead, So the pros are you don't have any controls here. Normally you would find yourself a safety and decocker. So you don't have to worry about where to put your thumb or decocking each time you take a shot. As the gun recoils, you would kind of inevitably hit those controls. The other control issue, which still remains, is the fairly rear set slide lock or slide release. It also tends to ride your thumb right there. Lots of folks have complaints about it. You can try to shoot it with your thumb up, but then you're kind of riding the slide, which is not a good thing either. Or you could do a revolver grip, which will guarantee locks, but again, the gun will become snappier, and you're not getting as kind of far up on the gun as you should. So you can order another one online and kind of sand it down. The HK did that in the SOCOM. They integrated it with the frame in the Mark 23 SOCOM, and their VP9 has it a lot more flush fitting. So just something to note. You could either cut it, sand it, or just modify your grip. I personally think the gun should fit you, not you to the gun. So something to think about. The magazines are 10 rounds, and that is kind of on the low end given the other 45 ACP pistol offerings. Apparently they did that so that they can still maintain a double stack but a thinner overall grip. You don't want to feel like you're gripping a 2x4, and you got to be careful if you double stack 45 ACPs. So the way that they did this is it's kind of starts off thin and then it staggers a little bit, and that will offer you a more comfortable grip at the expense of magazine capacity. I haven't seen any aftermarket magazines. They all tend to be 10 rounds. So as I mentioned, the rails are M1913 mil-spec rails, and they do there's no play whatsoever when you put on attachments. So 16x1 left hand, right? So which means you have to go right to tighten it and left to loosen it. When it does lock up, everything sits kind of very positive. You don't have to worry about the guide rod checking your suppressor. That's kind of thought of it. I think you may even be able to get away with a shorter piston depending on your make, and even maybe get rid of that 1/4 inch there. Shooting this suppressed is an absolute pleasure. The recoil is very light. I've had to try a few shots at an HK45 Tactical. This does have the O-ring in the front, so that should minimize blowback and perhaps even some sound. Got an AAC Tyrant full size. We'll see if it's hearing safe, and just the overall impressions of it. Standard 230 grain ammunition. Cycles just fine, no issues. I would put it within hearing safe. Not too bad, not too bad at all. No malfunctions whatsoever. I originally tried to run a Glock 21. I was having some issues there, I believe due to the firing pin block sitting so far close to the breech. It is definitely hearing safe with standard 230 grain subsonic, which it all tends to be ammo unless you're shooting 200 grain or plus P stuff. I'll see if I can get a video of that in here, just taking a couple quick shots. But overall, a very, very nice package. The other con that I didn't mention is the price. They're not cheap. I would say German pricing, but now they're made in the US, so maybe that cost will go down. But on the used market, they're definitely more affordable. Other than that, and the slide release, which I think is you can do a workaround with this particular issue. These are great guns. I recommend checking them out. Watch out, there's a lot of trigger variations, I think total of 7 or 9. I tend to go with the LEM. Like I said, both the LEMs are the same. You just have to watch the springs, but you're not going to get married into a particular version if you just pick one of them. So take a look at it. Like I said, fantastic guns to shoot suppressed. They tend to run great, and I think they're built from the ground up to do it. So enjoy it. If you have any questions, please let me know.